Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our next presentation. We're just going to give a few minutes to give a couple people time to filter in here, and we'll get started. Still have a few people filtering in here, so I'll wait another minute or so. All right, I think we could get started. Good morning again, everybody, and welcome to the second session of the 2023 Preservation Delaware Annual Conference. I'm Kara Smith, associate with John Milner Architects and a board member with PDI. Want to say thanks again to our 2023 sponsors who you can find listed on our website. Just a reminder, all attendees are muted. Please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll review questions at the end of the presentation. Or you can use the chat box if you're having any technical difficulties. This presentation is being recorded, and it will be available in a few weeks on Preservation Delaware's website, or I'm sorry, YouTube channel and website. And if you're not already a member of PDI, please consider joining or donating to help keep events like this one free. With that, I'd like to do a short introduction of our next presenters, who are Cheryl Black and Kevin Simmons, who are the owners of Mauchline in Wilmington. Kevin and Cheryl have 3 children, 2 grandchildren, who live with their parents in Ardmore, PA, which prompted their move to Wilmington. Kevin was born in New Jersey, but lived all over the world as a father, as his father was assigned to various countries working for Citibank. For the past 7 years, Kevin has been focused on restoring historic homes and bringing them back to life, beginning with a 1900s firehouse in San Francisco, and then an 1873 Second Empire home in Old Salem, North Carolina. And he's now devoted to restoring Mauchline. His skills, initially acquired working summers for carpenters and roofers during college, have been honed by apprenticing under the master craftsmen that he hires to work on his homes. Prior to home restoration, Kevin was a seasoned sales and operations executive, specializing in full-scale development of domestic and international sales efforts for companies seeking to expand their global impact. He was a VP of Global Sales Productivity for Salesforce for several years before founding his own company in 2013. He also has a passion for growing and roasting organic coffee that started when he and Cheryl bought a farm in the Andes of Ecuador in 2016. Cheryl was born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, but moved to Toronto and then Boston to pursue her first career as a professional ballet dancer. She could quickly change careers to become a software engineer following a downturn in funding for the arts in Massachusetts. And she worked as an engineer and then in management at various companies until bitten by the startup bug. She founded her first company in 1999 and worked for various startups until she became CEO of U Technology in 2014. She remained at UTech through a successful sale in 2019, which prompted a move to North Carolina, where the acquiring company was headquartered. She's now semi-retired and helping Kevin restore Mauchline, and she also loves drinking the coffee that Kevin roasts. So thank you both for being here. We're excited to hear about Mauchline, and please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to listen to us and help Preservation Delaware. I am so glad to have seen Chuck's presentation. I wish I had seen it before we started on this effort. However, Kara Smith and Emily Whaley were absolutely wonderful at dealing with my lack of knowledge about the whole tax credit process. So I appreciate them very much. And we would love to get more involved with Preservation Delaware when we're done with all of this. Right now, we just don't have a lot of time, but once we're done, we're going to be all in. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our project to restore Mauchline, which was the old Talman residence turned Padua convent. I guess it's the morning of convents, which is strange and unusual, but how we're going to return it to its former glory. You might see or hear our dog Apollo during this presentation. He's a Doberman Poodle combo, but he's a great sight dog, and he's here every day taking care of business. Before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about why Mauchline matters. There's two main reasons that it's historically significant. One is that it's the only remaining example of Wilson Ayres' work in Delaware. There's some buildings still in existence in Pennsylvania, but in Delaware, this is the only one. And then it was built originally by Frank Gifford Talman, who's a local significant person. So one fun thing about Mauchline is there's a lot of information available. There are boxes of correspondence between Ayre and Talman available at the Hagley Museum and Library. We've spent a little bit of time there going through some of the letters, but we look forward to spending more time there in the future as well. There's also papers available where Mauchline was published, and then we've got pictures and documents from relatives or descendants of the Talmans. So it's been great from that perspective. So our agenda today is to give just a quick history of Mauchline. I'm giving a nod to a very current thing. We're doing Mauchline, the Eras Tour. If you know, you know, and if you don't, I promise it won't bother you too much. Then we're going to talk a bit about our approach to restoration. And then our plan, we're going to focus mainly on our plans and our progress to date. And hopefully we'll leave some time for questions. I think we will. So the first era I'm calling Speak Now, because there's a lyric on that album that says, "Once I had an empire in a golden age." So that first era is the Talman era in English as opposed to Swiftie speak. Frank Gifford Talman came to Wilmington to work for DuPont. He also focused a lot on collecting Lincoln memorabilia, and there's a collection of his that's at the University of Delaware now. He and his wife, Anne Dickey Talman, built this property between 1916 and 17. It's named after the town in Scotland where Annie Dickey's father was born, Mauchline, or as I like to say, Mauchline. It isn't known exactly when the property was finished, but there's a letter dated December 2nd, 1915 from Wilson Ayre, stating that the drawings are coming along well, and they expect to start the model. And coincidentally, the great-great-grandson of Talman visited us, and they said that the model still exists in a barn that the family owns. However, it's been attacked by squirrels and raccoons, so there's not much of it left, which is unfortunate. Do you have anything to add to that? No, okay. There was a trade publication in March of 1916 saying that a $50,000 contract had been signed with Edward Johnson and Son in Wilmington to do the actual construction. And then there's the general contractor legally guaranteed the work for a period of 1 year starting in June of 1917. So we know it was complete by June of 1917.
We actually have the original contract.
Oh yes, we do have the original contract, which is fun. I think they paid about $63,000 total. Annie, Frank's wife, passed away in the house at age 63, and she wasn't living here very long. It was in the 20s, so she died fairly soon after they moved in. And Tallman remarried in 29 to who they called Aunt Julia. She wasn't their aunt, but that's what the kids called her after they got married. When Frank passed away in 38, there was a provision in his will stating that Aunt Julia could remain at Mauchline for a period of 3 years. She built another house and moved out. And Frank's oldest daughter, Marion Tallman Warner, purchased the property. But I'll get to that in a minute. So Wilson Eyre, who was the architect, was a prominent architect, but he was also openly gay in that time period, which was unusual. And there's talk that that may have limited his career. He was a known innovator in shingle style architecture, and he employed the open living hall, organizing all of the main rooms off the hall. And we do have a great hall where all the main rooms in the front of the house open onto. Prior to Frank Lloyd Wright's rise in prominence, Eyre was arguably the best known domestic architect in the US among foreign designers. Mauchline itself is a half-timbered Tudor revival home. There apparently the drawings still exist and are at the University of Pennsylvania. We haven't discovered those yet, but we hope to. It's a rough-faced brick used on the dwelling, which was pretty new at the time. These pictures that I'm showing now were actually in the 1919, or one of the 1919 editions of Architectural Forum. And one of the things I want to point out is the front of the building, there is now a portico, but it did not exist in 1919. We're not exactly sure when it was added. I'm sure it was to keep all the people visiting out of the rain when they were waiting at the door, but it did not exist in 1919. This is a view from Rodney Street, looking towards the house and what we call the backyard. It's really a side yard. This shows the existing pond and fountain that were here in 1919. This is one of the chimneys. Those two windows on either side of the chimney open into the Great Hall. Another view of the front where the portico now exists. This is the library as it was in 1919. And the drawing room that we're sitting in right now, which has a few different changes. It does not have the wainscoting anymore, but apparently it did at one point. Oh, I'm sorry. I am pointing at the screen, so apologies for that. This is the Great Hall, and this table actually is still here. It came with the family. They brought it from Europe. It came out of a
English monastery.
English monastery, and we've talked to a couple of antique experts who believe it's probably from the
1450 to 50.
1450 to 1550. The chairs that you can see, or the benches that are under by the fireplace, those are no longer here, but we did find some antique chairs that look somewhat similar, and they are now where those are. This is the dining room in 1919. So the other interesting thing is Wilson Eyre was also one of the founders and an editor of Home and Garden magazine. And Mauchline was also in the September 2020 edition of House and Garden. Eyre also designed his homes to have all of the main rooms open out to the outside so that you could share the outside and the inside. And Mauchline certainly is a good example of that. These are the pictures of the tulip gardens from 1922. Around, again, that existing pond and fountain. Happy to share more of it with you, but we'll move on. So the other really cool thing we have is a pretty thick couple of binders full of the original specifications that we got from the descendants of Talman. They specify every detail of what was used to build the house, what type of wood, how much concrete, the mortar and the bricks, everything is specified in this documentation. And we also have the contract, as Kevin said. We have a list of the changes and additions that were done to the original proposal. We have a list of all the light fixtures and exactly how much they cost and where they were from. Most of them are still here and we plan to keep them. But anyway, it's great to have that information. We've also got some pictures from the descendants. I didn't put many of them in here, but we have pictures of the family in bathing suits in that pond sometime in the 20s. So they used to use it as a pool. We also have this book plate that one of the relatives of Frank Gifford Talman created, an artist that created, and they were Emily P.C. Warner, okay, drew this, and they used this book plate. Sorry, I told you Apollo would make an appearance. In all the books in the library. He's a great safe dog. An example of some of the letters that we found at the Hagley. This one is just from Wilson Eyre, talking about how they could create this sign that is still over the front door here. But it's just really amazing to see all these letters and read through them. We're moving on to the second era, which I call folklore, because one of the lyrics in one of the songs on folklore is, their parties were tasteful, if a little loud. So this is when the Warners, which is the oldest daughter of Talman, married Irving Warner actually before Mauchline was even built. She was already married by the time Mauchline was built. And I found these old references to them in the Philadelphia Social Register. So they were pretty active in society. They even summered somewhere down, I can't read it because the Zoom thing is over top of it, but they had their summer social registry as well as their rest of the year location. They purchased the property from the Wilmington Trust Corporation after Aunt Julia moved on to her house. The descendants of the Talmans told us that they remember going to parties when the Warners owned this house, and it was the place to be on New Year's Eve. There was also, between the kitchen and the butler's pantry, there was a revolving food pass, where from the kitchen side, they would put the food in, crank it around, and it would come out the serving side. And when the descendants were little kids, they used to climb in there and spin each other around. So it was also wonderful to hear stories like that and really connect with the house. After Marion passed away, the Warner's children sold this place to the Catholic Church in 1971 for $75,000. One of the other things about that era is that this painting is built into the wall over the fireplace in the library. It was not there in the 1919 picture that we looked at. And this painting has a signature of Lee Reynolds in the bottom right corner. We researched that a little bit, and Lee Reynolds started a movement in the 60s to create oil paintings at an affordable, at a price affordable to like normal people. We think that this piece might have been commissioned because there are carved flowers that are very similar to the flowers in the painting, and you can sort of see them on, yeah, I'm pointing at the screen again, on either side of the painting. So we wonder if maybe this was commissioned for this space. Now we're moving on to the third era, which I'm calling Red, because there's a lyric on a song there saying, "This is a state of grace." And so this is the era of the convent. From 1971 until some period in the early 2000s, this was a resident for the nuns that taught at Padua. And Padua was brand new in the early 70s. We know that the drawing room that we're in right now was used for mass. When we purchased the place, there were actually still nails in the wall where the Stations of the Cross were. And there was still a platform in front of the fireplace where mass was performed. We don't know exactly how many people were in residence at the convent, but some of the bedrooms were divided during that time frame. So we think there were at least 14 nuns based on the number of bedrooms there were. We know that there were events for Padua and St. Anthony's held here, because we've run into a lot of people that say, "Oh, I was there for this event at some point during that period." We also know that during this time, the pipes burst to the pond and it was filled in. So we didn't know there was a pond there except by discovering it through those old photos. It was all just filled in. There's also a new roof put on, probably in the 80s, and probably by parishioners, because a lot of the work here during that period was done for free by parishioners. Kevin's mother is very involved with the Catholic Church, and she actually reached out to the diocese, and 3 of the nuns that lived here during that period sent us a welcome letter, and they would like to hold a reunion here once we get an elevator and a bathroom and some heat. So we hope they're still alive at that point. They're all at least as old as Kevin's mother, so who's 93. But we hope to have that reunion. The next era we're going to visit very briefly is what I'm calling Reputation, because there's a song, Reputation, on that album that says, "My reputation's never been worse. You must like me for me." And I think the state that Mauchline was in when we found it, we definitely loved it for its bones. So this is the empty era in non-Swiftie speak. There was some kind of catastrophic event which caused the nuns to move out in the early 2000s. And we have only heard this from the neighbors, that allegedly it involved water and asbestos. So there is still asbestos in the home, although it's being removed next week, I believe. But it was exposed somehow during this catastrophic event. The heat and the water were turned off, and a lot of damage ensued in this empty era due to lack of temperature control, missing chimney flashing, backup in gutters, all kinds of things. So I'm going to quickly give you a tour of the damage. So there's so many doors and windows. We just talked about Kevin stripping all of this paint, which we will talk about more in a minute, but they're all peeling. There's also a lot of plaster damage, just caused by water. This is the main area over the stairs. And apparently there was a big tapestry here at one point, which the Tomlins gave to the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., where it hangs today. There was a lot of mold everywhere, all the woodwork. There's a lot of woodwork here, and it was all covered in various bits of mold. And there's a lot of other issues, just broken glass, wood rot, just stuff. Now I'm going to talk about the era we're really focused on, the 5th and current era, which I'm calling Fearless. And I think there's so many reasons it's the right name for this era. What does that say? Oh, our approach. Okay, so our approach to this whole restoration is to understand the house the best that we can, to respect the bones and restore wherever we possibly can. We are planning to retain the original footprint. We're repurposing wherever we're going to repurpose a space, we're giving a nod to its original purpose. And a couple of examples of that is the original larder, which is off the kitchen, is a fairly large room. It had an ice pass in it. So back in the 1917s, that was the cold room. And we are going to use it as a walk-in fridge. So it'll still be the cold room, the larder. The linen room, which is on the 2nd floor, was used to store all the linen. We're actually going to make that the laundry room and store our linen there. So we did go through the tax credit process with Kara and Emily's help. We were brand new to the process. We submitted a series of 21 projects, and it was conditionally approved in July of this year. So now we can start the big projects, and we're really excited about that. We're starting to work with the city on all the things that need to be approved by the city. I did include, and I threw this in after Chuck's talk because I thought it was important, and thank you, Chuck, for, if you're still there, for telling me to put in the floor plan. This is the floor plan of the main floor and the garden. You can see the great hall, which is called the there's the entryway, which is the loggia that goes into the great hall. And then off to the right is the room that we're in right now, the drawing room. Off to the left is, at the bottom, the library, and above that, the dining room. The part at the top is all the staff or servant area, which includes the kitchen, the larder, the staff dining room. Then the 2nd floor, which is really blurry because there weren't very good plans to pull from. Again, the top area is the staff area, and you can see 4 very small bedrooms. We are planning to leave those and just use them for grandkids. We think that 4 grandkids hanging out in the back room, they'd have a lot of fun. The linen room I was talking about is right there below those 4 bedrooms. And then the main part of the house, I drew some not very good red lines where the walls were put up during the Red era or the convent era to make more rooms to fit more nuns. And I don't have a 3rd floor drawing, but there's also 4 more bedrooms on the 3rd floor as well as some attic space. So in terms of what we're doing, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so our approach was to start with, excuse me, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. Our approach was when we started, since we had to go through the historic evaluations and tax credits, we only did cosmetic work. So our approach was cleaning, and we have hundreds of hours just cleaning and polishing, removing dust, debris, chipping paint, etc., from the house. But as far as the major construction work of the house itself, we're not really doing a lot because of how well laid out the house was originally, and we really want to make sure that we keep those original bones. So yeah, at first it's all cosmetic.
Yeah, but I do want to say Kevin's taking it very seriously. He's stripping all the woodwork down to the bone. There's many, yeah, I do, but many layers of paint, and he's making sure there's no lead layers left in there. Cleaning and polishing all hardware. I'll give you an example of that here. Oops, why is that not working? Sorry, you guys, it stopped advancing. I might have to get out and in again. No? Okay, So this is, every time Kevin takes something apart, he'll clean it all the way down to the screws before he replaces them. So it's just an example. We are also hiring various people, and as we talked about, or Kara talked about, Kevin does tend to apprentice under experts we hire. An example lately is he has learned some plastering, which has been really helpful. Honed his plastering.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so what we did was we basically found a guy, Pete with Brandywine Plaster, who really likes the old school approach and really gets into it. And basically I worked at his and running mud and mixing mud and just watching him for hours and hours as we plastered some of the damaged walls and ceilings. So I learned a lot, which allowed me to feel comfortable attacking some of the ceilings in the library and the dining room and the living room.
We are also working with various parties to employ people that need employment. We recently hired a Syrian refugee through the Jewish Community Services. We're working with the parish to hire folks, as well as with a Wilmington judge to hire some work release folks. During the summer, we employed some local students and trained them a little. Kevin trained them on how to strip wood and various things. And sorry, Apollo. So some of them needed some volunteer hours for school, and then we also paid them for hours. Plans in progress. So now we're at the meat of it. I'm going room by room, and we'll go quickly. The loggia, which is at the front of the house, it was at the very bottom of the floor plan. There was a lot of wood rot at the very bottom of the doors. The beautiful white oak that they used was just totally rotted away. Do you want to talk about this, babe?
Well, I mean, we've initially thought we were going to be able to fix the bottom of the doors. These doors weigh anywhere from 800 to 1,000 pounds each, and they were built and placed. There was 4 screws holding that door into the masonry, because it was all compression fitted in place. So we found a 3rd generation Mexican woodworker, Jose Rios, with Rios Heritage Woodworking, and they are rebuilding those doors in white oak. And we think he thinks they're going to be closer to 12 to 1,300 pounds. So we're going to need a lot of people helping with that.
We're going to show you a short Thank you for indulging me. So this is a picture of the actual door. You can see that the top is still the same original white oak that was there from the beginning. And then they've rebuilt using the same white oak, the bottom part of the door, and they're replacing the original glass in place as it was.
We hope we're not using the original white oak, but we are replacing it with white oak, yeah. And then the lead glass, we have an 80-year-old stained glass artist that's putting the lead glass back. There was 3 or 4 pieces that were broken, and it looked like somebody hit it with a baseball bat. So we're looking forward to getting those back in the next couple weeks.
Sorry, this place is a madhouse, but this is the library. And again, there's that painting, and you can see the detail in the woodwork around the mantle. But you can also see that the wood was quite moldy and old. On the picture on the right, part of it is cleaned, but it's right next to some that is not cleaned at the time. This is a lot of the molding. The ceiling in the library was the worst, the most damaged of all of the ceilings. And we actually had to fill in some of the molding in the ceiling. We got a silicone mold kit and made molds of the actual crown, not crown. Anyway, okay. And then fitted in some pieces to make it.
And we'll do the same thing in the other places where we have damage with the crown. We'll build a sled and basically use the same type of horsehair plaster and rebuild those pieces with the right profile. And we've been getting great help from local industries where they're going to actually laser cut the metal blades for us, because all of our molding in the house is bespoke, and you can't just get the pattern done. But yeah, we hope to replace it all as it looked originally.
This is very short. Yeah, okay, I'll skip it. It was him. Okay. This is just more of the work in progress. This is.
Yeah, so in this is the kitchen, or the kitchens. This is the library. We'd hope to maintain the original texture of the molding of the ceiling itself, but it was when we got up and really did a lot of inspection, it was in really poor shape. I mean, we probably have 40 or 50 hours just repairing cracks and making sure that the new plaster would adhere. So we used plaster weld and several other really interesting products to make sure that it was done correctly. It came out really well.
That's finished ceiling. Now moving on to the dining room. This picture was from before we purchased the property. Kevin has again repaired the cracks in the ceiling. Anything else you want to say?
I mean, it was as you learn, as you continue to do it, we again took the ceiling inch by inch and identified the cracks, worked them all out of place, pulled all the loose debris out of them, and then literally put our hands on every portion of the ceiling, testing to see if it was still adhered strongly to the lat. And luckily, we didn't have to replace any of those pieces. It was more making sure that it had its mirror-like finish, which I think we've accomplished.
That work in action, and this was just last week. It's almost done. We still have to paint the wood, or Kevin is going to still paint the woodwork, and some other people that are working for him. Now moving on to the room that we're sitting in. This is what it looked like when we purchased it. It had the little stage in front of the fireplace where they performed mass. Had mass, sorry.
It's, I know.
The original lights, the sconces are original. The ceiling lights here were not there in 1919. And we have actually moved them. We're still using them. We've just moved them to a different place.
All of the woodwork in this room is white oak, and specifically zebra white oak. And you can see sort of how much cleaning took place. On the left-hand side, that actually had been cleaned a couple times, and over on the right is a finished product, getting all the mold, mildew, just build up on those. But the wood is just amazing, and it really shined when we put the work in.
And the ceiling in this room was probably the middle, the dining room being in the best shape, the library in the worst. This was somewhere in between.
Yeah, so as you can see, we did have to adhere back to the lat and secure it, but again, the ceiling is completely redone, and it came out beautifully. It's a testament to the original craftsmanship that went into this home.
And this is completed, the ceiling's completed. We've also painted this room, and this is what we replaced, those light fixtures that we moved. We found some 1910s halophane lights that just look a little better in here, but we are still using the original lights, just in a different location. Bedrooms were a hot mess, honestly. They're carpeted, a lot of peeling paint. I'm showing you various different bedrooms. We can go through it quickly. I don't mean to bore people. I feel like this is our travel log. This room, we are now, Kevin scraped layers of wallpaper and paint, yes, off the walls and ceilings. And that, on that last picture, you can sort of see on the right, there was a blue-green plaster on the walls originally when we got all the layers off. So we did a nod to that color, and we're calling this the Tiffany room, just because it's like a Tiffany color. You can see Audrey Hepburn there. This bedroom, when Kara and Emily were here, actually, it was in this state with the wallpaper and paint peeling off the walls. And I think it was Emily or Kara, one of them found that there was this etching on the wall of the elevation of the mantelpiece. There's one of the pictures crossed out and then another one. So we think they were done by whoever was creating the mantelpiece. And we've cleaned it all up, scraped it, primed, painted. But you can see, if you look closely, that we've left that piece that had the drawings on the wall, and we will be preserving that and making sure that it's that it won't go anywhere. And thank you, Emily and Kara, for finding that. I'm not going to show videos there. The only reason I had that is because it was showing this room before. This is one of the rooms that had a dividing wall for the nuns, and it
was separated into 2 bedrooms with a hallway and with a shared bathroom. So we did is we went back to the original footprint, which created a lot of issues, just because the way everything was adhered to the ceiling and everything else. So we had to refloat the entire ceiling to make it blend and to match, which added to the work. But the room, I mean, we literally took every bit of paint off every wood surface and then sanded it down to the original wood, and then repainted, including taking all the screws out, like Cheryl said earlier, and polishing every piece of brass and putting it back in the exact place that it was found. So it's a little bit anal what we're doing, but we think the house deserves not to throw things away and to save everything that we could possibly save and reuse it.
Yeah, and actually in this room, when he got everything off the wall, there was a deep rose pink plaster on the wall, which was really pretty, actually. This is one of the other room that was divided. So this fireplace was originally in the bedroom, and then when the convent was here, this was divided into a hallway with 2 bedrooms off of it.
There's extensive damage in this room as far as water damage around the fireplaces and the windows, which we addressed.
I'm only going to show a minute of this because this is the most fun ever. Okay, you get the drift. But so this is now the room without that hallway and the 2 bedrooms in it. So now the fireplace is back in the bedroom. And Kevin had to, again, refloat the ceiling and all that.
And I think next week we'll start on stripping those windows. Another good thing about almost every window in this place, other than when I have help, when they paint windows shut, which is
That happened last week.
which is really a lot of fun trying to get them unstuck. But all the windows on the property are in great working order and just need to be maintained.
So moving on to the kitchen, on the left was what it looked like when we purchased. It had a linoleum floor. When we took up that floor, there was a layer of the checkerboard linoleum, and then under that was the original cork floor, but it was disintegrated. So on the right, you're seeing it down to the what kind of wood?
Floor. Well, no.
Okay, some kind.
That was plywood on top, which you're seeing, and then we pulled all the plywood off, and it's the ceilings, the floors in this place, and the ceilings. It goes basically laterally cut, angle cut hemp or what am I thinking of? I'll think of it in a second. Hemlock, and then there's about 6 inches of concrete, and below that there's hemlock and then plaster. So every ceiling, you don't hear a creak, you don't hear a sound through these walls because of how well it was built.
There is one bank of original cabinets in what was the butler's pantry area of the kitchen. Kevin did strip that all the way down and then repaint it. We are having Jose build another bank of cabinets for across from that original bank with the exact same doors. He's going to recreate it to match that original.
We're going to make the same profile and then make it look. Although we can't use some of this. I don't know what my dog's doing. We can't find any of the hinges that we were looking for, but we do have some doors and other hardware that will replicate. And we actually found for the drawer pulls, a company called the Ball Kitchens out of England makes a reproduction pull that looks exactly like that. So if we come up short, we may have to be buying some of those.
The huge hood over where the stove must have been was painted, several layers of paint when we got it, but we read in the specs that it's Russian steel. Kevin stripped it back, and there was also that, is that brass?
Yeah.
Brass around it. We have ordered a stove that's 89 inches that will take up most of the space underneath that hood. It will be here in February.
I think so. But yeah, so basically we're gonna the stove was originally vented into the chimney on that side of the house, that chimney was utilitarian. It wasn't used. There was no fireplaces on that side. So we've already looked with our chimney experts, and we're going to revent that hood with a modern insert. So we're going to keep that same look and feel, but get the CFMs, the ability to vent that properly.
Just a few more details of the kitchen. We do have some call buttons that we are trying to get working again. In the middle top picture, you can see there was many layers of paint over the original subway tile, which is where it's not cracked. It's really beautiful. It's got the crackling effect in it. So we've taken a lot of that paint off, and we will continue to clean it and preserve it. We are also replacing the floor with cork as it was originally. So we've got boxes of it sitting over here, but we just took a couple pictures. It's got a nice cork subfloor layer and then cork on top, so it's going to be nice and soft under your feet.
Well, the reason we're actually doing that is that the original floor was 3/4 inch thick,
yeah.
Cork flooring, which you can't get. So what we're doing is we're using a 1/2 inch subfloor, cork subfloor, and then basically 1/4 inch tile to create the pattern that was there. And at least it will match the elevation of the slate that you see behind and the door jambs.
The cloak and powder room, which is off the Great Hall, was covered in layers of paint and wallpaper. We stripped all of that back. And then we did find a little bit of gold, kind of Art Deco-y wallpaper in there. So we used a gold foil wallpaper for that little powder room. Elevator and dumbwaiter. We are going to get the elevator working again. We have a really great gentleman who owns a company called Lift Art working on that. He's restoring or
yeah, so basically we're taking an approach of saving. He came in and within 5 minutes it was going up and down. So but we're rebuilding motors, rebuilding the brakes, rerunning cable. And you see on the far left side, that was the computer control unit, command center for the elevator, and we're having that rebuilt, I think, in New York. And the guy Donovan made an interesting comment to me, basically saying, I'll do this right because I'm a lot cheaper than an insurance policy or a lawyer. So we think it was used utilitarian for an elevator to bring things up and down stairs, but we have older parents that are waiting for this to get working again so they can come visit.
And then the dumbwaiter, you can see on the right, we're going to keep the very top of it exposed so that you can see it working when we get it working again. This is digging out of the pond. I know we're out of time and we need to leave it time for a couple questions. So greenhouse, we've done a lot of work on that. If you want to follow us, please do. We're on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want a tour of the house or you want to get involved, you want to script some paint, anything, this is our contact info. And we're done. Sorry.
No, that was great. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for being excellent stewards to this building. I can see it's a huge undertaking, and the preservation community appreciates it for sure. I'm going to go through right into the questions here, reminding our attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. I think you may have answered this one just now, but someone asked, do you intend to live in this house over the long term? And if so, how are you incorporating living in place senior accommodations in a historic house? So I think you guys are lucky you have an elevator. Are you planning to stay there though?
So we're designing the house so that we can, and we would like to, but our real dream when we bought it was giving it back to the community, allowing Padua to use it for fundraisers, support the arts, support our things that we want to support, and if it's going to be in a very expensive property to maintain, so we will be looking at hosting some weddings and receptions and charity events and so forth. But we've sort of devised the house so that we could have our private area along with our granddaughter, because her room's ready, and then using some of the other rooms for say brides and bridesmaids getting ready for a wedding down at St. Anthony's or something like that. So but our intent is to live here.
That's fantastic. Have you considered how you're going to incorporate landscaping into the restoration? So I think we kind of went quickly over that, but how is that being considered?
When we take on a project, we basically design a lot of the things ourselves, and we let the house and the lawn sort of speak to us. We do have all the original landscaping plans that the house was built with, and we're modifying that a little bit just because you have to do it if you're going to have tents in the backyard or things for an event. But we're going to for instance, the pond. We're going to restore the pond. We've already started. It was actually had a pool pump in it in 1916. So it was out in the greenhouse. So we're going to restore that. But I think what we'll do is we're going to build a retractable floor. One of my engineering friends was pretty into it. And he's like, oh, we can build this. So we'll build this so that when we want the fountain to show completely, that floor would be on the bottom of it, but we can raise it up so it would become a place where you could sit around the fountain, or we could drop it 3 inches so it could be a splash pool for the grandkids. So that's sort of what we're trying to do, but come see us next summer.
Wow.
We are planning to replace the chain link fence that's around the property with a.
Yeah, we found some fencing from a resort in the Poconos, and the fence was built in 1880, in the 1880s. So we bought that, and we're going to repurpose it to put back the original design of the fence around the property, and just add to the overall look. Open it up some more so we don't have those privet hedges hiding the property, so people can see it.
Show off all the hard work. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I'm just a little bit under the weather, so I'm a little bit fidgety.
Sorry. So the next comment is a request, not a question. So have you guys considered retaining a section of unscraped or unstripped paint so that you can determine original finishes, or have you done any paint analysis?
When we find paint, for instance, we make a note of it, and we do have the mixture of how the paint was done. Every single surface in this was done with 4 layers of lacquer on the plaster, which helped preserve the plaster. But when we find that paint color, we actually, for instance, in the Tiffany room, it was pretty close to the original color when we got back to it, and so we paid homage to that color. Where we are stripping things back to the original form, we sometimes that color is so muted now, we really don't know what the original was, but we make our best guess, and we try to utilize that where we find it acceptable. Some of the color choices weren't what we wanted, but so we went with our own direction.
So you are
that.
Go ahead.
So, no, I was just trying to understand keeping the actual paint. Is that what they, like a sample of it? Is that what they were talking about?
Original finishes that future owners or future architects can understand what was originally there.
Yeah, I mean, like we did up in the bedroom with Winnie, is we preserved those drawings, and again, we think that might have been from Wilson Air, because what we understand is he came into buildings and drew all over the walls as an architect. So we preserve that. We'll put it into a frame. And when we were replacing, for instance, horsehair plaster, when there was a piece of plaster, we actually are going to retain that. We actually want to dedicate a room someplace in the house and sort of create a little a museum with original drawings, original paperwork, and so people can see what was going on. But again, that's in the plan. Just on a day-to-day execution, we do our best to do that.
Can you recommend a product that you use to strip off the paint?
Off the plaster moldings and off the walls, or off the woodwork, we do use the speed heater. It's a Swedish product that I think Cheryl mentioned that heats the resin behind the paint to about 450 degrees. And from what my understanding is, lead does not vaporize until 700 degrees or something. So it doesn't release any of the lead vapor, and you can peel off large sections. So it's saved us countless hours. So I can't,
it's called EcoStrip.
EcoStrip's a company in the US that distributes the speed heater, but EcoStrip is their Instagram page or Facebook page, but they've been great.
Awesome. Do you have any idea who did the original plaster work? We have somebody who thinks their grandfather was a plaster working in Wilmington at this time and did high-end work. We're trying to find a family relation.
Yeah, we haven't, in the original paperwork we have from Wilson Air, it does talk about the plaster. It talks about the mixture of how the plaster was mixed, the proportions, how it was laid, all of those things. But it just says contractor. And we've been trying to find through the original builder if we can find out who those contractors are, but we don't have that at this point.
There's a possibility that it could be in one of the papers at the Hagley, just because there's receipts from, you know, the people that changed from coal to oil, from oil to gas. Like there's all kinds of receipts in those boxes. We could look for that for who, if we can see who did the
Keep it in
plaster.
mind.
Yeah.
And then just one last question. Can you talk about the roof at all?
Yeah, so the roof has been going on the roof. That's where we're having a lot of issues. The slate or the shingle roof that's on there now is about 12 different colors, and we think it was done by parishioners who just had leftover shingles and came and did the house for the church. All the valleys and the hips, they're the original copper. We can was left in place. The original crickets, which is the area around the fireplaces or the chimneys, was also copper. So we are going to pay homage to that. We're looking at a product called Brava, which does a slate shingle look. Our hope is that we get that approved by the city to use. And the reason being is doing it in the original slate, one with the engineering, because people don't believe that the house could hold it, which I think is crazy. But the other is using a tile, which was original to the house. So the house was originally going to be slate. They moved to tile, and we're not sure why. But that tile is, yeah, we would spend twice as much on the roof as we did for the house if we use that. So we're trying to use the best product for the house to maintain the historic look and get to and unfortunately, you know, we don't have an endless budget, so we've got to take everything into account. But Brava's been really good, and we hope to be able to get that installed in November.
And I know we're late, but I totally skipped the whole thing about what we've done, which I was going to talk about the roof. The electric is.
Yeah, we've been working diligently on getting the whole house rewired, asbestos removed next week, hopefully. Then we'll attack the HVAC and plumbing. But the HVAC, we're working with some great guys that want to understand how the original technology worked, and people that have come to this house, it's pretty amazing what Talman and Ayers did as far as the engineering. So we want to try to utilize that as much as possible.
It's absolutely fantastic. We have a lot of comments in the Q&A just saying thank you and that they enjoyed the presentation and grateful for your efforts here. I want to reiterate that Cheryl and Kevin have been nice enough to open up their homes. We're going to try to work with Preservation Delaware to try to get a tour organized potentially in the near future. But once again, we're very grateful to you guys for sharing your home with us, and also say thanks to Apollo. We appreciate his input as well. It's such a great project. So, so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. Nice to meet you all.
A reminder to our attendees, our next presentation will start at noon. So we have the Voices from State College for Colored Students of Delaware Graduates. That'll be a great panel discussion, so I hope you all can hop back on at noon and join us there. Once again, you'll log off and then just use the same link to start the next presentation. So thank you all again.